The world of Clair Obscur revolves around death. Its primary themes and plot explore how people deal with death, how they suffer death. It realistically crafts a world and a society shaped by the certainty of the gommage, the certainty that they will die not at some undetermined future date, but that they will die when they become too old. When the paintress finally paints their age on her monolith and erases them from existence. And by the time of the game's story, there is only a scant few decades left before every single person in Lumiere suffers the gommage. Parents must wrestle with the fact that not only will their children live shorter lives than they lived, but that those children will have precious few years to live with their parents. Each person living in Lumiere must wrestle with the fact that they will not have enough time to fully live out their lives, and any hope for a future lies in the hands of those who come after. The cruelty of death, the fickle nature of time, and the omnipresence of grief are explored thoroughly and thoughtfully, posing difficult choices without clear answers. It is perhaps the most profound part of an extremely compelling story. No easy answers are given, sometimes no answers are given at all. Clair Obscur explores some of the most difficult questions we face in life and refuses to give us the lie. It refuses to answer the unanswerable. Contained in the dialogue, stories, and narrative of this game is the most relatable, the most human, the most realistic depiction of death and grief and loss that I have ever seen in a game. Yet for as much as Clair Obscur is about death, about the consequences of death, of the cruel reality of death, it is equally about those who are left behind. The people who have to wake up to a tomorrow without the ones they love, left to find some way to move on, to find a way to discover the light and joy in the world even after the pain of loss. It is a story about death, about grief, but also about beauty. About hope for the future, even if it's a future we may not see. Eventually, tomorrow comes. The opening act of Clair Obscur does a brilliant job of setting up the world as we are gradually introduced to its structure through dialogue and minor exposition. There is no lore dump that explains the game. Sandfall Interactive, the developers of Clair Obscur, do a masterful job of giving you just enough information through dialogue and environmental storytelling to paint a picture of what is happening in this world, creating emotional investment in the characters and their stories before raising the stakes and setting up a typical adventure. We are introduced to Gustave and then Mayel, his adopted daughter, as well as his ex-girlfriend, Sophie. We learn, despite still being in love, that Sophie and Gustave broke up because Sophie didn't want to have children, believing that kids shouldn't be born into a world without hope for the future. Finally, we learn that Sophie is about to die. She's 33, and at the end of this day, the paintress will paint her age upon the monolith, and Sophie will fade away, consumed by the power of the gommage. Throughout this intro portion of the game, we are shown little vignettes, little stories that grant color and character to the world. We see a pile of furniture, gifts left by those who are about to die, a chance for their possessions and belongings to have use for others in the future. We see a man who wants Sophie to deliver an expedition uniform he has sewn for his son as a gift after they had an argument over his son's desire to join the expedition. People in Lumiere view the expeditions as suicide missions, but this man, on his last day, realizes that he admires his son's bravery and wants to support his child in whatever way he can, even after he is gone. These stories are small, inconsequential in the grand scope of this game and the epic journey that awaits, but these personal moments do so much to give life to the setting and its characters. These people feel real, their conflicts and their emotions feel real, and their deaths feel real. The gommage is beautiful and haunting all at the same time. Garlands of red and white flowers ascend to the sky as each person fades into nothingness. Some terrified, others grimly accepting their fate. One by one, they vanish from existence as their loved ones watch on in horror. If you spent time talking to the people in the street leading up to the harbor, you'll recognize some of those who gommage: the man whose son is going to join the expedition, the woman who argued with Sophie about not having kids. Eventually, they all disappear, leaving Gustave and Sophie holding each other's hands until even she is gone. Each person leaving behind death and misery and grief. It is brutal beyond words. Each victim of the gommage witnesses the paintress paint their age upon the monolith. You can see the fear in Sophie's eyes, the tears she cries because of how scared she is, and you can see the helplessness and resignation in Gustave. The game does an incredible job of showing these small details that hammer home the immensity of what is happening, how this event has shaped every single aspect of these people's lives for decades. And you understand their determination to finally end this terror and reclaim hope for the future. It is extremely compelling. This prologue does an incredible job of selling the world, creating relatable and interesting characters, and then giving you a reason to care about them. After the gommage, the game begins to properly introduce the expeditions and the expeditioners, a group of people that band together every year and attempt to journey to the main continent to defeat the paintress. Over time, these expeditions begin to be viewed as hopeless. No one from any expedition has ever returned, and as a result, most of the people who join are those with only a year left to live, opting to attempt to defeat the paintress rather than wait around for the gommage. This is yet another example of how deeply this game explores death and the logical conclusions that come to a society that faces something like the gommage. The expeditions make sense initially as a way to defeat the paintress, but after 66 years of failure, who would even bother? It's understandable that the people of Lumiere view the expeditions as suicide missions, and it's clear that even the expeditioners view their chance of success as basically zero. Going on the expedition is more about claiming agency over death than it is about hope for the future. After each year's gommage, the expeditioners who are about to leave have a massive party, both to mourn the dead, but also as a way to have one last day to celebrate. The expeditioners know their odds of success are slim, so they enjoy their last day in Lumiere as best they can, playing games, gambling, drinking, and dueling. The next day, the expedition heads out to the continent and arrives on its shores, but disaster strikes immediately. Gustave and his expedition are ambushed by an old man, someone far older than should have been possible considering the gommage, and the expeditioners are slaughtered. Gustave's friends are killed right before his eyes, and Gustave blacks out before awakening in front of a waterfall. The sequence is shocking and is one of the many ways this game pulls the rug out from underneath you. The expedition and its expeditioners are given a lot of breathing room. You get to know characters that seem like they may end up being important just for the game to kill them off. In some ways, this is a recurring motif. Death is both a theme to be explored, but also a plot device to drive the story forward, and the consistent message that Clair Obscur gives you is that this is not a happy story. It is not a traditional heroic journey, and there will be more suffering and more death before this story is finished. Gradually, Gustave gathers the remnants of his expedition. One member, Lune, is found when Gustave is at the heights of his despair, ready to end his own existence rather than continue to suffer all of this death and pain. But Lune convinces him to continue on. His will to live is further strengthened when he realizes that Maëlle may still be alive, and this too is a consistent theme. Characters struggle to find the will to live, or grasp onto faint hope as a way to make sense of the cruelty of their reality. They set out to find Maëlle after discovering a clue to her whereabouts, and find her inside of a mansion that inexplicably has an entrance underwater and a coral reef. Maëlle explains that she woke up in the mansion after the events of the beach and has been trying to find a way out, but can't leave without defeating the curator, a mysterious being that has been helping her train, but also blocking her escape from the mansion. With the help of Gustave and Lune, Maël is able to defeat the curator and leave. The 3 surviving expeditioners then go on a series of adventures where they meet a fantastical race of humanoids known as Gestrels and travel to one of their villages. There, they find a 4th member of their expedition, a woman named Ciel. While at the Gestrel village, the expeditioners discover that there is another sea separating them from the Paintress, and they need a way to cross that sea, but with their boat destroyed, they have no way of crossing. The leader of the Gestrel village suggests they find a mythical figure known only as Esquier, who may be able to help them get across the sea. After a short search, the group finds Esquier, who agrees to help them in exchange for finding his special rock, which allows him to swim. The group discovers that the rock they are looking for is in a place known as Stone Wave Cliffs. After fighting through numerous enemies and a boss known as the Lampmaster, they discover Esquier's special swimming rock. Lune and Ciel hop on Esquier's back, who now can swim, and get ready for the journey across the sea, but Maël and Gustave stop to play a game, one they've been playing all throughout the first act. Gustave has a habit of skipping rocks across water closest to the Paintress. He tells Maël in the beginning of the game he's trying to hit the Paintress with each rock that he skips. After arriving on the continent, Gustave and Maël skip rocks together, attempting to bond and heal the trauma of their collective loss. The Gommage, Sophie's death, the deaths of the other members of the expedition have taken their toll on both of them, and this game is a kind of therapy for the characters as they learn how to manage their grief together, channeling their anger, their rage, their pain into this petty act of meaningless defiance against their collective tormentor. So it's shocking and alarming when the old man from the beach shows up as the 2 begin to skip rocks towards the Paintress once more. There are these cuts back and forth in the cinematic that show the old man slowly walking towards them as Gustave and Maël begin to skip rocks, joking about how much closer they are to the Paintress, how they might actually be able to hit her soon. And then the rug is pulled out from underneath you once more as the old man blasts Gustave in the chest with a beam of light. Gustave staggers as blood pours out of his wounds. The damage is grievous, but Gustave resolves to fight, to protect Maël from the danger, or die trying. But his attacks barely do any damage to this old man, and Gustave eventually succumbs to his wounds after being stabbed in the chest with a massive blade of light. His final words to Maël being simply, "For those who come after, right?" After Gustave's death, the old man approaches Maël, seemingly intent on killing her as well, only for his killing blow to be intercepted by a mysterious stranger. The stranger and the old man seem to know each other, and they argue for a moment before the old man stands down and allows Maël to leave, jumping safely onto Esquier as the group sails away. Gustave's death is shocking on more than a few levels. Initially, it's a complete surprise because the game has been pretty clear that Gustave is the protagonist, the determined man whose loss of a loved one drives him to defeat the big bad that threatens the world. It's a familiar story, especially in this genre, with games like Final Fantasy X serving as a sort of clear inspiration. But then, all of a sudden, Gustave is dead, and everything we thought we understood about the story is thrown up into chaos. Clair Obscur is not a traditional hero's journey because our hero is dead. How each member of the party handles that death is as complicated and diverse as how people in real life handle loss and grief. Lune is determined to carry on his goal and defeat the Paintress, to honor his memory and the memories of so many others lost because of the Gommage or the expeditions. Even if their chances of success are slim to none, Lune believes they can pave the way for the next expedition. Maël is at first overwhelmed by her grief and her sadness, but then is furious, driven by an immense desire for revenge upon the old man that killed Gustave and the Paintress that caused all of this misery. Ciel is more reserved. We later learn that her husband died 5 years ago in an accident, and she had to learn how to process his death years before she expected him to die in the Gommage. We get the sense that while Gustave's death is heartbreaking, it's not the first time she's had to say goodbye to someone close to her. Before she was ready, and she knows how to grieve without becoming consumed by her emotions. But beyond the way that Gustav's death impacts the characters is how it impacts you, the player. We see Sophie's death, we see the gommage, we see the deaths of the expeditioners and the corpses of the previous expeditions. We see death a lot in this first act, but we experience death when Gustav dies. Like I said, he's set up to be the traditional protagonist, the lens through which we view the world. We experience things as he experiences them, from his perspective. So when he dies, in a way, we die. Our hold on the story is lost because our lens to view it no longer exists. It is a fantastic narrative trick, and should you feel a genuine connection, Gustav's death feels impactful, it feels real. And the grief and misery that the members of the expedition display feels real too. You mourn him just as the characters do. Gustav is funny, charming in his own awkward, nervous way, but earnest as well, willing to sacrifice himself for the people that he loves. He is an immediately likable person, one who you connect with and relate to, and then he's dead. Now you and the rest of the expeditioners have to figure out how to move on. Back at the camp, after Gustav's death, the stranger that saved Mael shows up and introduces himself. His name is Verso, and he was part of the first expedition, alongside their commander Renoir, the old man that killed Gustav. He claims that the reason he and Renoir were never claimed by the gommage has to do with the Paintress. Renoir is killing the expeditioners because he believes that as long as the Paintress is alive, Renoir is immortal. So, by killing the expeditioners, he removes any threat to the Paintress, thereby prolonging his immortality. Verso offers to help the group by showing them the fastest route to Monolith and delivers Gustav's broken prosthetic, the only part of his body that could be recovered. Along the way through the path to the Monolith, Verso deepens his connection to the group. He shows them a place to bury Gustav's prosthetic arm. He takes the time to talk to Mael and understand her grief, as well as the grief of each member of the party. As they continue to travel closer to the Monolith, they recruit another member to their expedition, a gestural named Minoko, who is Verso's oldest friend, a powerful warrior that will help their cause against the Paintress and her minions. Verso reveals that there is a massive barrier around the Paintress that prevents her from being harmed, and in order to pierce the barrier, they need to find the Paintress's heart and destroy it. Luckily, he just so happens to know where her heart is, in the center of Old Lumiere, or at least what remains of it. When the party arrives at Old Lumiere, they are split up, with Mael and Verso becoming separated from Lune, Ciel, and Minoko. The separated parties make their way to the center of Old Lumiere, reunite, and discover Renoir and the mansion that the party has been seeing throughout their adventure, including when Gustav and Lune found Mael after the beach. It's revealed that Renoir is not just Verso's commander from the first expedition. Renoir is Verso's father. Renoir accuses Verso of trying to destroy their family and of lying to Mael. The conversation doesn't make a lot of sense, at least not yet, but it becomes clear that Verso is not telling the party the full truth about his relationship with Renoir and the family that Renoir accuses Verso of trying to destroy. The party then fights Renoir, eventually defeating him, but not before the mansion, Renoir, and the Paintress's heart are teleported away. With the expedition's plan thwarted, they return to the camp to try to figure out another way to defeat the Paintress. Lune mentions that she found a journal from a previous expedition that said there was another way to pierce the barrier, one that doesn't involve destroying her heart, but instead requires defeating two creatures known as Axons, using their hearts to create a weapon that can pierce the barrier. Verso objects, saying it's a suicide mission. The Axons are orders of magnitude more powerful than any of the things they've fought so far, and the group isn't strong enough to defeat them. But with no other viable options, the group presses on. Eventually, after a series of epic battles, they defeat both Axons and open the way to the Monolith by piercing the barrier with the weapon forged by the Curator, the mysterious figure that was watching over Mael after the events of the beach. After attempting to fight the Paintress and failing to do any damage, the group finds a portal inside the monolith and enters, where they are forced to battle some of the toughest of the Paintress's creations. After seemingly endless battles, the party makes its way to the top of the monolith, where Renoir awaits. As the party approaches Renoir's boss arena, the screen turns black and white, and we witness a vision of a man and a woman holding each other, looking on at your party as you approach. Verso stares at them knowingly, and then Renoir appears as the screen returns to color. Verso and Renoir have a conversation that doesn't seem to make sense. Verso states, "We're taking her down." Renoir replies, "She's not the only one who grieves. The pain of losing you, she made me inherit it. I refuse to lose my son." And then Verso replies, "That son was a stranger." Renoir says, "But you're not." Verso concludes their conversation by reminding the party they only have to incapacitate Renoir, and then the party prepares to fight. But something should become immediately obvious. We do not have the full story, but Verso does, and there is clearly something very important Verso isn't telling us. This is confirmed when, after defeating Renoir, he angrily yells at Verso, "Remember who your real family is, your mother, your sister, me. You would condemn us all to die. For what? Who do you really save with your sacrifice?" And when it becomes apparent that Verso is committed to destroying the Paintress, Renoir tells him, "Then let us celebrate the second destruction of the Descendre family." Things become even stranger when the curator shows up, this entity that kept Mayel in the mansion until she was strong enough, that has strengthened the expedition's weapons and resources, who forged the weapon that pierced the barrier around the monolith. The curator appears, and Renoir apparently knows him and tells him, "At long last we meet. This is all you have left of your son. Destroying it won't bring your wife back." The curator seems unmoved by Renoir's words, however, and the curator and Mayel both touch Renoir at the same time and turn him into dust, similar to what the Gommage does. With more questions than answers after Renoir's fight, we ascend even further to the very top of the monolith, where a cutscene plays that begins to answer some of the questions begged by the previous conversations. The wife that Renoir has mentioned is the Paintress. We learn that Mayel looks like Alicia, the Paintress's daughter, and that Verso is her son, or at least looks like her son. The Paintress mentions a fire and Mayel's face, but then the Paintress starts to doubt herself. She mentions someone playing tricks on her, doubting if Mayel is Alicia, wondering if Verso is really there, and then Verso responds, "Verso is dead." The Paintress then turns away, convinced that they are not her creations, they are his creations. As the party prepares to fight, the Paintress screams, "You will not take this canvas from me." It's here that I need to explain something you've known all along if you completed this game. Clair Obscur doesn't take place in the real world of the game's setting. It takes place in a painting. The members of Verso's family have the ability to create paintings or canvases that can contain entire worlds in them, and in those worlds, the painters have the ability to create life. Not just landscapes, but also thinking, feeling, sentient beings. The painting the game takes place in was created by Verso when he was a child, a place to escape from the real world and go on magical adventures with his siblings, where he created his friends, Esquier and Minoko, as well as the other Gestrels and Grandis. Verso's painting remained relatively undisturbed as Verso grew into adulthood, but eventually Alicia, Verso's sister, inadvertently causes the death of the real Verso in a fire. Only the fire didn't just kill Verso, it injured and crippled Alicia too, her face scarred from burns that left her mute. After the fire, Verso's mother Aline is so grief-stricken that she enters Verso's painting, where a small portion of his soul remains. From there, she recreates Lumiere from the real world, complete with the humans who hadn't existed in the painting when Verso created it. The paintress that the people of Lumiere believe is their tormentor is, in actuality, their creator, a woman named Aline. Her husband, the real Renoir, comes after her into the painting when she won't leave, and he attempts to force her to leave by destroying it. Renoir does this because he believes Aline will stay in the painting forever and eventually die in the real world as a result of staying too long. Aline and Renoir struggle for control of the painting, and this struggle manifests as the gommage. It turns out that the gommage is a consequence of Aline slowly losing her strength as she tries to protect her creations from Renoir. So after every year in the painting, she is forced to destroy her older creations in order to protect the others. The gommage is a desperate gambit from their creator to save the many at the expense of the few. This whole journey to destroy the paintress, Lumiere's struggle against the gommage, the expeditions, it's all recontextualized with this new information. Destroying the paintress means forcing Aline out of the painting, allowing Renoir to destroy Aline's creations, including the people of Lumiere. The expedition's goal of defeating the paintress will result in the destruction of everything that they know and love. This is the final proverbial rug pull. We as players think we understand the story, we think we understand the characters and their motivations, and then suddenly we understand nothing. The Renoir we just killed isn't the real Renoir. He's a painted creation of Aline, her idealized version of her husband that would do anything to keep the painting and their family intact. The Verso that we know is also a creation of Aline, a similarly idealized recreation of her real dead son. The family that the painted Verso knows isn't the real Desandre family. They are Aline's creations, a way for her to create a version of her family as she wants them to be, not as they actually are. This whole journey, the plot of the game and its precipitating events are spawned out of a misunderstanding of the nature of the painted world's reality. The paintress isn't some world-consuming villain. She isn't Sauron. There are no Saurons, no villains, no good guys, no heroes, just a broken family trying to deal with death, trying to move on from a loss that feels impossible to overcome. But caught in the middle are the people of Lumiere. After the 33rd expedition finally defeats the paintress, they sail home to Lumiere as the villain-conquering heroes they think they are, and the characters congratulate themselves and rejoice and excitedly plan for a future they thought they would never have until the horrifying, awful nature of what they have done manifests. The gommage happens, but it's not just 32-year-olds or 31-year-olds or 30-year-olds that are taken. Every single person in Lumiere suffers the gommage, and Verso sits beside the harbor, unable to watch as they disappear one by one until finally even Mael is taken. The story flashes back 16 years before the start of the game's events, and we see how Alicia ended up trapped in the painting. She was trying to get her mother and father to stop fighting and entered the canvas in an attempt to reason with them. But as she entered, she was overpowered by Aline and had her memories rewritten, being born into the world as Mael. The Mael we know in the game doesn't understand her role in the real Verso's death. She doesn't know who Renoir or Aline or who any of her actual family members are. She thinks she's from the painted Lumiere, that her parents died when she was young, that she was adopted by Gustave and his sister Emma. But when Mael suffers the gommage, she is reborn again, only with all of her memories restored. She knows who she is. She knows why the real Renoir is trying to destroy the painting. She knows that the paintress is her mother, and that this whole conflict has been started and perpetuated by the core issue that Renoir and Aline are fighting over. Should Verso's canvas be destroyed? This question defines the rest of the game. Renoir believes that by destroying the painting, by finally forcing his family out of their fantasy, he can get them to confront the reality of their lives and to begin the process of grieving and eventually healing. Aline believes that staying in the painting is her way of grieving, and that while Renoir can grieve however he wants, she is going to grieve in her way, and there isn't anything he can do to stop her. Mael doesn't want the canvas destroyed, as she can't bear losing the last remaining piece of her brother. Additionally, the painting has become a home for her, where she has a family and friends, where she isn't burdened by her disability, where she can be Alicia as she was meant to be before the fire and the pain and the misery of her real-life existence. Alicia is reborn into the painting with her memories restored, and after she gomazes, she goes to Lumiere to meet with Verso. She and Verso talk for a while about his status as a painted recreation of the real Verso, of how wrong it was that Aline painted him into existence, how sorry Alicia is that Verso is caught in the middle of her family's problems, how the collateral damage of the real Verso's death has led to so much more pain and suffering. She tells Verso she wants to convince Renoir to help rebuild Lumiere now that her mother has been forced out of the painting, assuming Renoir now has no reason to destroy Lumiere or its inhabitants in the canvas. But when Verso and Nael find the real Renoir, he is adamant. The painting must be destroyed so that Aline and Alicia can't be tempted to stay in this place where staying too long means death. He says, for the sake of the living, we must part with the dead. If anything, that one line encapsulates Renoir's position. A cruel choice must be made for the sake of those who remain, and Renoir won't let Verso's death kill Alicia and Aline too. Alicia remains defiant, and as Renoir begins to destroy the canvas, Esquier and Monoko arrive to fly Verso and Alicia to safety. Back at the camp, Alicia reveals that with her memory restored, she can now harness her powers as a member of the Desandre family to paint things back into life, and Alicia paints Line and Ciel back into existence. With their party reformed, the group resolves to stop Renoir before he can destroy their world. After exploring Verso's canvas and increasing their strength, the group sets out for Lumiere to confront Renoir. After a grueling battle as the group fights through Renoir's painted creations, they finally reach Renoir for the final showdown. Alicia tries to convince Renoir one last time to not destroy the canvas. She explains how difficult her life has been since the fire. The pain and the guilt that she feels is unbearable except for in this canvas. This painting has allowed her to regain a sense of self. She wants Renoir to understand just how important this painting has become to her, not just because of Verso, but because of her friends like Lune and Ciel and Esquier and Monoko. Lune and Ciel both appeal to Renoir. Ciel talks about how grief blinds us from making the right choices. Lune impresses upon him how much impact the choices that parents make have on their children. Renoir is genuinely moved. He understands how Alicia feels because he too was similarly enthralled by a canvas, unable or unwilling to leave the world that he had created, but his heart hardens. The group may be speaking the truth, they may be correct, but as Alicia's father, he has to do what is best for her, especially when she can't look out for herself. The bottom line remains that Alicia will not leave the painting of her own volition, which means she will die, something that Renoir refuses to accept. So the group prepares to fight, and after a tough battle, Renoir is finally defeated. Renoir, broken and battered, reveals to the group that once it was Renoir who was enthralled by a painting, refusing to leave. Aline was the one who saved him back when he was trapped in his canvas. She was the one that taught him how to soar without flying too close to the sun, to use their power safely because there's a price to be paid for time spent in these paintings. That danger was always at the forefront of their minds. No matter how many worlds they painted or how far they pushed their abilities, Aline and Renoir remained conscious of the fact that the paintings were dangerous, that they could kill you if you stayed too long. He explains that the reason he has persisted for so long in trying to bring his family out of the painting was to find some way to fix this. Verso's death broke them. Aline, blinded by grief. Alicia, a living ghost. He needs to fix it. He needs his family back. But in the end, Renoir knows that he can't stop Alicia and her party. He says to Alicia that he will keep the light on for her, hoping that she will recognize the danger of the canvas and return home. Alicia tells him that she will come home. She just needs a little more time. And with that, Renoir gamages. During their conversation, Renoir had opened a portal that showed Aline in the real world after she learned of Verso's death. The painted Verso sees this portal and jumps in, apologizing to the group, simply saying, "I'm sorry." The portal leads to a strange room, seemingly surrounded by and made up of ink and paint. At the center of the room is a boy that the characters have seen throughout their journey, but have had difficulty communicating with. Verso approaches the boy and asks him if he's tired of painting. The boy seemingly nods yes, and Verso responds, "I'm tired too." But it's revealed that Alicia followed him in, telling him he's not supposed to be here. She asks him why he came as Verso starts to visibly disintegrate. Verso responds, "See things as they are, not how you want them to be." Verso knows that she lied to her father about leaving the painting. He tells her she's going to die here. He asks her why she doesn't just leave and then come back. Mael claims that the second she leaves, her father will erase the canvas. Verso responds that this canvas isn't worth her life. Alicia counters that she has no life in the real world, only a miserable existence in a broken body. Verso tells her that she doesn't need this canvas to be the person that she is in here. She could be Mael anywhere else, but Alicia refuses to listen, and as Verso reaches his hand out to convince the boy, who is the shard of the real Verso that maintains the canvas, to stop painting, Mael draws her rapier and gets in between them. She refuses to let Verso destroy the painting, and Verso refuses to let her die in here because she won't leave. The two prepare to fight, and the player is left with a choice. Do you play as Verso and defeat Alicia, or play as Alicia and defeat Verso? Each choice carries significant consequences for the characters in the game. In Verso's ending, Alicia is defeated and forced out of the painting, like Aline and Renoir, but as she gommages, Verso reminds her of her ability to paint, that she doesn't have to suffer a life she doesn't want. After Alicia is gone, Verso sees Esquier and Monoko. These are Verso's closest friends, companions that he has shared a lifetime of friendship and adventure with. He tells them that he will miss them as they fade from existence, before finally seeing Ciel and Lune, who say nothing but look on as they gommage as well. Verso takes the hand of the child that is painting the canvas, and the two walk side by side as they too gommage, and the painting is erased. We later see a scene where Aline, Renoir, Alicia, and her sister Clair all gather in front of Verso's grave in the real world. Alicia smiles as she sees Lune and Ciel and Esquier and all of her friends from the canvas waving at her in the distance. A reminder of the relationship she has lost. But she smiles, seemingly reconnecting to her family in the real world and making peace with those that she's lost. In Alicia's ending, Verso is defeated, but he still begs her to stop the boy from painting, to end his existence. He's tired of living, tired of being the ghost of a dead man whose family can't let go. But Mael refuses. She says she just wants this lifetime. The one where her brother is still alive and they can have the lives that were stolen from them. At the end of their conversation, Verso is consumed by the gommage as well, but it's revealed in the epilogue that Alicia has repainted him and the people of Lumiere, all of them. Sophie, Gustave, Lune, Ciel's husband Pierre, all of them are returned to life. The game ends on a series of cuts between Alicia watching Verso preparing to play piano in a concert hall, but Verso seems reluctant to play, and as Alicia watches on, we see Alicia seemingly age as her face begins to be covered in paint. The implication being that she's starting to die from staying too long in the canvas. These endings are brutal, heartbreaking, devastating, and thematically appropriate. If you've been paying attention to the story, to the characters, and the dialogue, the game has told you over and over and over, literally, life forces cruel choices. The ending you pick is cruel because life is cruel. There is no happy third option where everyone gets what they want. You either choose to obliterate a painting full of sentient beings who do not want to die, or you condemn Verso to a life he abhors. You condemn Aline and Alicia to death because they refuse to leave the painting. We don't know what happens to Renoir in Alicia's ending, but I can't imagine he'll take the death of his wife, his daughter, and his son particularly well. Regardless of what you choose, someone suffers, be it the denizens of the canvas or the real Desandre family desperately hoping that Aline and Alicia will return to them. Clair Obscur is a complex game with a number of different themes. Death, grief, family, parental misdeeds, and the difficulty of letting go are all explored thoroughly. But to me, this game feels like a metaphor, a way of showing us how difficult it is to grieve for the people we love. Death and grief permeate every aspect of this story, from Verso's death starting the chain of events that leads to the people of Lumiere being painted into existence, to the Gamage, to Gustave's death, the numerous dead expeditioners from previous expeditions. Death is omnipresent. Characters struggle to deal with their grief, and it causes them to act irrationally and dangerously. From Aline and Alicia refusing to leave the painting, to Renoir's extreme measures to force them to leave, and Verso desiring his own death so badly he's willing to destroy the painting, killing everyone else that he knows and loves. There aren't any easy choices to be made here. If you choose Alicia's ending, then I don't blame you. It's the utilitarian choice. If the denizens of Verso's canvas are sentient, then destroying their world is in essence committing a genocide for the sake of a handful of real people, an arbitrary distinction that feels meaningless given the nature and scope of your adventures. Are Esquier and Monoko not real? Are their emotions, their actions, their agency, is none of that real simply because Verso painted them decades ago when he was a child? What makes their lives any less important, any less precious than Aline, Alicia, or Renoir's lives? Truthfully, I can't defend my choice to destroy the painting. It felt like the correct choice given the game's themes and story. There is an easy surface-level reading of this game that views it essentially as an allegory for grief. Mayel has to learn how to let go of her grief over her brother's death, and she can't do that staying inside the painting where she doesn't have to face reality. The painters of these paintings are essentially godlike beings with power over life and death, an omnipotent creator in the very same sense as an Abrahamic god. She can paint Verso back into existence and have a life she could never have back in the real world. She can be free from her disability and her guilt, all without doing anything. She doesn't have to learn. She doesn't have to grow. Mayel can embrace stasis and stagnation while being surrounded by her friends and family, staying in a fantastical world that the real one could never compete with. To me, that sounds like so many other people that I've known that drown themselves in alcohol or drugs or any number of other escapisms to avoid dealing with the harsh reality of their lives. I know I'm guilty of some of these same vices, of drowning myself in anything other than my problems, but that isn't healthy. It's not how we grow as people, how we overcome the challenges in life. If this was simply about helping Mayel overcome her trauma and grief, then Verso's ending is the correct choice. But it isn't that simple. Destroying the painting means destroying Esquier and Bonoko and Lune and Ciel and Gustave and Sophie and all of the other people and creatures in this world that by all accounts have agency. They have sentience. If the painted people of Lumiere didn't have sentience, then they would never have started the expeditions. They wouldn't be trying to unknowingly destroy their creator and the only thing keeping them alive. Aline would have painted them to help her stop Renoir, not the other way around. And this is the final masterstroke. Many games give you a hidden third option. If you do the right things at the right time, talk to specific characters, or find the hidden MacGuffin, you get a third option, a way to rectify two difficult choices so that you get the best of both worlds. Clair Obscur refuses us this fantasy. Giving Mayel what she wants results in her destruction. Giving Verso what he wants results in the destruction of an entire world of sentient beings. And again, in a purely utilitarian sense, the correct choice is obviously to save the painting. But as we see in Mayel's ending, is it morally correct to condemn Verso to a life he doesn't want? He begs Mayel to unpaint him, to end his suffering, and she ignores it and paints him into existence again. While nothing is explicitly stated by the game, the way that Mayel and Verso look in the concert hall is telling. This is not a happily ever after. Not for Verso, and possibly not for Mayel as well. I began to realize something as I played this game, as its themes and story became clearer and the role that grief and death play manifested fully. What this game is trying to tell us is that grief is a mirror. We reveal who we are as people when we grieve, and while there are stages of grief, I don't think there is a universal way to grieve. We all go through the stages, but how we deal with them is different, and some people never complete the process. They spend their entire lives hiding from the pain they feel. In the same way that grief is a mirror, this game's ending is a mirror. There is no objectively correct choice. Either way, people will suffer. People you care about will die, and you have to figure out how to deal with that. To deliver this specific story about death, about grief and loss in a medium best known for escapism is absolutely brutal, but completely brilliant as well. Clair Obscur is not escapism. It is not a hero's journey. It is an accurate portrayal of how human beings deal with death, and it culminates by forcing you to grieve. You grieve for the people of Lumiere, for Esquier and the Gestrels, or you grieve for Alicia and Aline and Verso and Renoir. As Renoir says, life keeps forcing cruel choices. In a game that accurately portrays the ways that people deal with those cruel choices, it seems only fitting that this game ends with a cruel choice as well. I'm not here to tell you which ending is correct. I don't believe there is a correct ending. I'm here to tell you that this game is an experience, one that I have never had in all my decades of being a gamer. Thought-provoking, beautiful, and heartbreaking all at the same time. Leveraging every aspect of what makes video games unique. Beautiful visuals, engaging and interesting gameplay systems, a cast of wonderfully voiced and written characters with an incredible soundtrack, all of which culminate into elevating this game into more than the sum of its parts. There are a lot of games nowadays that are given the title of masterpiece. I think that term is thrown around a little too liberally, but to me, this game is a true masterpiece, a wholly unique experience unlike anything else I have ever played. It has made me feel, it has made me cry and reflect on my own past and my own trauma, and I am grateful for having had the privilege to experience it. Thank you for watching this incredibly long video and sometimes rambling video. This was not the easiest thing in the world to put together, and I am deeply appreciative of your time and your support. I'm going to try to increase the rate at which I make videos. 1 per month is not the goal, but this was a beast of a topic, and I felt like it needed more time than I would usually devote to a normal video. For those of you who watched my Kazan video, I do plan on covering the new boss rush mode, so be on the lookout for that in the next week or so. Thanks again for watching, and be safe.